The last bid. The auction hall was alive with noise. Aliens from all corners of the galaxy filled the room, their eyes gleaming with interest as the next item was brought to the stage. The lights flickered above, casting strange shadows over the crowded space. Holographic banners hung in the air, displaying numbers and symbols that only the most seasoned buyers could understand. At the center of the stage stood the girl. No one knew her name, but everyone had heard the rumors. She was different, untamable. She was brought out in chains, her green skin glowing under the harsh lights. Her long white hair flowed around her shoulders, a stark contrast to the dirty rags she wore. Her eyes were full of fire, showing no fear, only defiance. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the hall. Next up, the untamable alien. A fierce warrior, unbroken by the chains that bind her. Who will start the bid? There was silence. No one spoke. The alien girl stood tall, her gaze sweeping across the room, daring anyone to look at her without feeling intimidated. She had been in these auctions before, but this was different. She knew she wouldn't be sold today. Her reputation was too strong, too dangerous. No one wanted to deal with her, not really. The auctioneer's voice rang. Out again, this time more urgent. Starting bid, 100,000 credits. Any takers? Still, the room remained quiet. A few buyers exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to make of her. Some whispered among themselves, speculating on her origins, on the stories they had heard. But no one made a move. They all knew this alien was untamable. There was no profit to be made from someone so wild. She could hear them. She could hear the doubts, the fears, the whispers of caution. She had been in situations like this before. She had been sold and discarded by others, used and abused. But today, she wouldn't let them break her. She stood firm, refusing to show any weakness. The auctioneer sighed, his frustration clear. Very well, he muttered. Let's move on to the next. Before he could finish, a voice interrupted. Him, a human voice. I'll take her. The room fell into stunned silence. Everyone turned to look at the man who had spoken. He was standing at the back of the hall, his face hidden in shadow. A human. He was the last person anyone had expected to make a bid, and yet here he was, speaking those words that no one had dared to say, excuse me. The auctioneer blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. The man stepped forward, his boots clicking on the metal floor with each step. I'll take her, he repeated. How much for her? The alien girl's heart skipped a beat. She turned her head, narrowing her eyes. She had seen many things in her life, betrayal, pain, despair, but this was different. This human wasn't afraid of her. He wasn't treating her like some dangerous creature, something to be locked away or disposed of. He was looking at her as if she were something worth paying for. It was a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. The auctioneer's voice wavered as he spoke. You're serious? He asked, still shocked. She's not like the others. I know exactly what she is, the man said. Cutting him off, I've made my decision. The crowd shifted uneasily. The bidding had ended for all the others, and now the alien girl stood alone. She felt the eyes of the room on her, waiting for her to react, waiting for her to try to escape or fight back. But she didn't. She simply stood there, staring at the human with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. The auctioneer hesitated. Very well, then, he said. Finally, his voice filled with disbelief. The bid is accepted. You've purchased her. The alien girl's heart raced. No one had ever bid on her before. No one had ever shown interest, let alone paid to own her. What did this human want with her? Why had he chosen her out of all the others? The auctioneer motioned for her to be brought forward. As she was released from her chains, she glanced at the human once more. He was standing tall, his expression unreadable, but there was something about him, something that made her think that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't like the others. As she walked toward him, her mind raced. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a strange sense of hope. What was it about this human that made him different from all the others? The buyer's motive, the alien girl's chains were gone, but her mind remained trapped in confusion. As she walked beside the human, she couldn't help but steal glances at him. He wasn't what she had expected. He wasn't afraid. His stance was confident, his eyes cold, yet there was something almost understanding about him. The crowd behind them parted as they made their way out of the auction hall. Whispers filled the air, but the human didn't seem to care. He walked with purpose, leading her through a narrow corridor that led to a small shuttle waiting for them. His pace never slowed, and his eyes never wavered. The girl kept her distance, her mind whirling with questions. Why had he bought her? She had seen countless bidders, each one with their own reasons for purchasing slaves, but none of them had ever shown such interest in her. She was trouble, everyone knew that. She was untamable, dangerous even, and yet this human had chosen her. "Are you planning to sell me to someone else?" she asked, breaking the silence. The man didn't look at her, his eyes fixed ahead. "No," he replied, his voice low and firm. She stopped walking. "Then why?" The human paused, but only for a moment. "You're not what they think you are." The words took her by surprise. She had spent her entire life in captivity, treated like nothing more than an object for sale. No one had ever looked at her and seen something more. But this man, his words didn't feel like an empty promise. They reached the shuttle, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. The human stepped inside, but before entering, he turned to her, his gaze finally meeting hers. "I bought you because you're not a slave," he said, his voice strong. "You're something much more." The girl's heart pounded in her chest. His words were like a spark in the darkness, something she had longed for but never thought she would hear. But she was still skeptical. She had heard similar words before, and they had always been lies. "I don't believe you." He didn't argue. Instead, he motioned for her to step inside the shuttle. "We'll talk more once we're on our way. For now, just trust me." Reluctantly, she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the interior of the shuttle. It was sleek and modern, with glowing control panels and an advanced navigation system. This human clearly wasn't some common buyer. He had money, power, influence, but what did he want with her? As the shuttle doors closed behind them, the engines hummed to life. The ship lifted off, rising above the city like a bird escaping its cage. The girl couldn't help but look out of the window, watching as the auction hall and the alien market faded into the distance. She felt the weight of her past slipping away, but there was no time to celebrate. She had been in too many dangerous situations to let her guard down now. The human sat down in the pilot's seat, adjusting the controls. He turned to her once more. "I'm not going to sell you, but I need your help." "Help?" She raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know me. What could I possibly help you with?" He leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. "There's a war coming. A war that's bigger than anything you've ever seen, and you have the power to stop it. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. The girl couldn't believe what she was hearing. A war, her. How could someone like her have any influence over something as big as a galactic war? I don't know what you're talking about, she said, shaking her head. I'm just an alien sold at an auction. I'm not a hero. I'm not some key to stopping a war. The human smiled, but it wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a smile of understanding. I didn't buy you because I thought you were a hero. I bought you because I know what you're capable of. You just don't know it yet. The girl's confusion deepened, but there was something in his words that made her listen. He wasn't lying. There was an honesty in his voice, something she had never heard from anyone else. She crossed her arms, trying to process everything. I've heard stories, she said quietly, but they don't make sense. How can I help stop a war? The human sat forward, his eyes locked onto hers. Because you're not just any alien. Girl, you have a power inside you, one that's been hidden, even from you. And I'm going to help you unlock it. She didn't know whether to believe him or laugh at the absurdity of it all. She had spent her life fighting, surviving, trying to prove that she was more than just a weapon. And now, this human was telling her that she had some hidden power. You think I can save everyone? She asked, her voice laced with doubt. I think you can change everything, he replied. But first, you have to trust me. For the first time in a long while, the girl didn't know what to think. She had lived her life in a cage, both physically and mentally. But now, for the first time, someone was offering her a chance to break free, not just from her chains, but from the limits she had placed on herself. Could she really trust this human? Could she really believe that she had the power to make a difference? As the shuttle zoomed into the unknown, she realized that the answers she sought might not come easily. But one thing was certain, her life would never be the same again. A dangerous companion, the shuttle soared through the galaxy, the stars stretching into endless ribbons of light. The girl sat across from the human, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she watched him closely. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, but the silence between them was heavy. She had questions, so many questions, but she wasn't sure where to begin. The human had said she had a hidden power, something within her that could change the fate of the galaxy. But she wasn't sure she believed him. What if he was just another liar, another one of those who saw her as nothing more than a tool to be used? Where are we going? She asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was sharp, but there was an edge of curiosity in it now. What's your plan? The human didn't turn to look at her immediately, keeping his focus on the navigation controls. I'm taking you somewhere safe, he said, his voice calm. Somewhere you can learn to control your abilities. Abilities, she repeated, raising an eyebrow. What abilities? I don't have any powers. I'm just a slave, bought at an auction. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. You've been told that for so long, you've started to believe it. But the truth is, you were never meant to be a slave. You were meant for something far bigger. She wanted to argue, to tell him that he was wrong, but something in his voice stopped her. He wasn't like the others who had bought her in the past. He wasn't looking at her like a possession, like something to be owned. He looked at her as if he saw potential, a spark inside her waiting to be ignited. Her heart skipped a beat. And what happens when I learn to control these so-called abilities? Will you still sell me off like the others? The human let out a small, amused chuckle, but there was no humor in it. You really think I bought you to sell you off? He shook his head. No, I bought you because I need you. I need you to help me stop something. Something terrible. She leaned forward, her curiosity growing despite her wariness. What's coming? He paused, his hands tightening around the controls, as if the weight of the answer was too much to bear. A war that could destroy everything. The girl sat back in her seat, absorbing his words. A war, she frowned. But wars come and go. What makes this one so different? This one is different because it's not just about planets or species. The human said, his voice low, filled with urgency. It's about control. Someone is trying to control the universe, and they'll use anything to get what they want. She frowned. And you think I can stop them? A slave with no past, no future. The human's eyes softened. I don't think you're just a slave. And you do have a future. A future where you're not controlled, where you're not owned by anyone. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together the puzzle. This human, this stranger, had bought her for something more than just a passing interest. He had a plan, a purpose. But what was it? Why her? And why now? Who are you, really? She asked, her voice quieter now. What do you want from me? The human met her gaze, his expression unreadable for a moment. I want to save the galaxy. I need you to help me do that. She stared at him, unsure of whether to trust his words. But then she remembered what it had been like before living in chains, living for others. This man, this stranger, was offering her something different. He wasn't treating her like a slave. He wasn't treating her like an object. He was treating her like she mattered. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, her voice small for the first time. You don't have to do it alone, he said, his voice reassuring. You just need to trust me. Trust that I'm not lying. The girl looked out the window, her mind still spinning. She had never trusted anyone before, not after everything she had been through. But there was something about this human that made her wonder. What if he was telling the truth? What if this was the chance she had been waiting for? She sighed, knowing she had no other choice but to trust him, at least for now. All right, she said, her voice steady, though there was still doubt in her heart. I'll help you, but I want answers. You'll get them, the human promised, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The girl turned her gaze back to the stars outside, the galaxy stretching out before them. She didn't know where this journey would take her. She didn't know what kind of power she held or how she could stop a war. But she knew one thing. Her life was about to change, and it was no longer in her hands. For the first time, she felt a strange sense of hope. She wasn't sure if she could trust the human, but she was willing to try. And maybe, just maybe, she could become more than what they had all told her she was. Secrets revealed days passed as the shuttle glided silently through the vastness of space, the stars their only companions. The human had been silent for most of the journey, but the girl couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. She had come to realize that this was no ordinary mission. There was something bigger at play here. The human wasn't just any buyer. His calm demeanor and unshakable confidence made her wonder if he was hiding something. She spent her days alone in the shuttle's small cabin, trying to focus on the tasks he had given her. He had promised to help her unlock her hidden abilities, but so far there was little sign of anything unusual. She had spent so much of her life in survival mode, fighting, running, and hiding, that she had forgotten what it felt like to simply exist. But here, with the human, everything was different. She was free, in a way, but the uncertainty weighed heavily on her. What kind of power was he talking about? What could she possibly do to stop a galactic war? One evening, as the shuttle made its way toward a distant planet, the human finally broke the silence. "We're almost there," he said, his voice steady as he adjusted the controls. She looked up from where she had been sitting by the window, her mind still preoccupied with the mystery of her newfound situation. "Almost where?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "To the planet where you'll begin learning about your abilities," he replied, glancing over his shoulder at her. "It's a place where people like you can train." "People like me," she echoed. "I've never met anyone like me." The human turned to face her fully, his expression more serious than she had ever seen. "That's because you don't know what you really are." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. "What do you mean?" He stood up slowly, walking toward her. "You're not just some alien girl sold at an auction. You're a part of something much bigger, something that was hidden from you." The girl felt her breath catch in her throat. She stood up quickly, facing him. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "Who are you really?" The human hesitated for a moment before he spoke again, his voice quiet but firm. "You were born with a gift, one that's rare among your kind. It's a power that could change the outcome of the war. But to unlock it, you need to understand what's inside you, and that's where I come in." The girl stared at him, her mind spinning. "A gift?" she asked, incredulous. "What could I possibly have that's worth anything?" The human didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, no bigger than the palm of his hand. It glowed softly as he placed it on the table. In front of her, "This is a memory device," he explained. "It contains information about you, about your past, and about the power you have." The girl's eyes widened as she looked at the device. "My past," she whispered. "How do you know anything about my past?" "I've been tracking you for years," the human said, his gaze softening. "I didn't buy you by chance. I've known who you were long before the auction." Her mind raced. She took the device in her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. "What's inside? It will show you everything," the human said, his voice steady. "Everything about who you are and why you were created." With a deep breath, the girl activated the device. A holographic projection flickered to life in front of her, showing a series of imagized alien worlds, scientific experiments, and faces she didn't recognize. And then, there she was. She saw herself as a child, running through the halls of a lab. She was younger, but she knew instantly that it was her. The image flickered, and then another memory appeared this time. She was being taken from the lab, her hands bound, her face filled with fear. "Why am I seeing this?" she whispered, almost afraid to ask. The human's expression remained somber. "You were a part of a secret project, a program designed to create a new kind of soldier, one with abilities that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy." The girl felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "I was created?" she asked, the words barely a whisper. The human nodded. "Yes, they didn't want you to know the truth. They wanted to control you, to make you into a weapon for their war. But you were more than that. You were something else entirely." The girl's head spun as the memories continued to play, each one more unsettling than the last. She had been taken from her family. She had been experimented on. And worse, she had been forgotten, left behind, just like a discarded tool. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Why wait until now?" The human looked at her with regret in his eyes. "Because I wasn't sure you were ready. I wasn't sure if you could handle it. But now, ... Now, I know you're ready. The girl felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had always known something was wrong with her life, something she couldn't explain. But now, the truth was too much to process. This power, she said slowly, still in shock. How do I control it? That's what we'll teach you, the human replied. We'll train you, together. She looked at him, her heart filled with a mix of fear and hope. Could she really be more than what they had told her she was? Could she really have the power to change the course of the war? Why me? She asked, her voice soft. Because you're the only one who can, the human answered. You're the key to everything. You just don't know it yet. Allies and enemies, the days on the training planet passed quickly. The girl, still coming to terms with the revelation about her origins, found herself slowly adapting to her new reality. The human whose name she learned was Kai was patient, but firm in his approach. They spent hours every day in training, learning to unlock the dormant power inside her. At first, she struggled. The power felt like a distant echo, something just out of reach, no matter how hard she tried. But Kai didn't give up on her. He pushed her to her limits, to places she didn't know she could go. And slowly, she began to feel it, the energy inside her, coursing through her veins. It was like fire and ice combined, a strange and powerful force that seemed to grow stronger the more she accepted it, despite the progress. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the truth hanging over her. She had been created to be a weapon, an experiment to shift the balance of the galaxy. What if the war that Kai spoke of was the same war she had been created to fight in? Was she just another pawn in someone else's game? But then, everything changed. One day, while they were training, a sharp warning beep sounded from Kai's device. His face darkened as he checked the screen. "We have company," he said, his tone cold and serious. The girl immediately stood up, her heart racing. "Who is it?" "Enemies," Kai replied, pulling a small weapon from his side. "And they're not here for a friendly chat." The girl's mind raced as she followed him outside. The planet's training grounds were located in a remote area far from civilization. The only sounds were the wind and the occasional bird call, but now the air felt charged, tense. She could sense the danger coming as they moved into position behind a rocky outcrop. She saw the ship approaching a sleek, dark vessel, its engines glowing with an ominous red light. It landed with a soft thud, kicking up dust as the hatch opened. The girl's eyes narrowed as she watched figures emerge from the ship. They were tall, armored, and menacing. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but the aura of danger around them was unmistakable. "Who are they?" the girl whispered, her voice tight with suspicion. Kai didn't answer right away. He seemed to be studying them, his body tense. "Old enemies," he said quietly. "The ones who created you, the ones who think they still own you." The girl's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of the creators before, but she hadn't truly understood the full extent of their reach. These were the people who had built her, the ones who had experimented on her, and now they had come to reclaim what they believed was theirs. The soldiers moved swiftly, their weapons drawn, scanning the area for any signs of movement. The girl's mind raced. She had been trained for battle, but never like this, never against the people who had created her. She wasn't sure if she was ready for what was coming, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't let them take her back. "We need to move," Kai said, his voice low. "If they find us, they'll destroy everything we've worked for." The girl nodded, her body instinctively shifting into a defensive stance. She felt the power inside her beginning to stir again, a strange mixture of fear and anger fueling it. She didn't know if she was ready to fight, but she knew she had no choice. As they crept closer to the enemy soldiers, a loud crack echoed through the air. One of the soldiers had spotted them. "Get down," Kai shouted, diving behind a boulder. The girl followed, her instincts taking over as she dropped to the ground. The soldiers fired their weapons, the blasts narrowly missing them as they took cover. The girl's heart raced in her chest, her mind still trying to process the situation. These were the people who had created her, the ones who had seen her as nothing more than an experiment. Now they were hunting her down. Kai peeked out from behind the rock, his eyes scanning the soldiers. "We can't take them all on," he muttered. "We need to get to the shuttle, now." The girl nodded, her mind still reeling. She had never been in a fight like this before, but she wasn't going to let them take her. She wasn't going to let them control her again as they sprinted toward the shuttle. The soldiers followed, their footsteps heavy behind them. The girl felt the power inside her flare up again, stronger than before. She had no idea how she was doing it, but the energy felt like it was coming from deep within her untapped well of strength that was begging to be used. She turned quickly, facing the oncoming soldiers. In an instant, the power inside her surged forward. A blast of energy shot from her hands, striking the closest soldier and sending him crashing to the ground. She didn't stop to see if he was alive. She didn't care. All that mattered was getting away. Kai's eyes widened in shock. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "You've unlocked it." The girl didn't have time to respond. She turned and ran, pushing herself harder than she ever had before. She could feel the soldiers closing in, but she was faster now. The power inside her gave her speed, strength, and focus. It was like a part of her that had been dormant for so long had finally woken up. They reached the shuttle just as the soldiers were about to catch up. The doors slammed shut behind them, and the engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off the ground, rising into the sky as they ascended. The girl leaned against the wall, her breathing heavy. The fight had been short, but intense. She could feel the power inside her still crackling, waiting to be used again. Kai looked at her, his expression serious but filled with respect. "You've just made them notice you. And now there's no turning back." The girl didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. Everything had changed in an instant. She wasn't just a slave anymore. She wasn't just a weapon. She was something more. And whatever was coming, she was ready to face it. A fateful choice. The shuttle cut through the sky, leaving the battle behind them. But the girl couldn't shake the images of the soldiers, the ones who had come for her. They were still fresh in her mind, their cold faces hidden behind helmets. Their weapons drawn, their mission clear, to capture her, to bring her back to the people who had created her. Kai's eyes were locked on the controls, but he could feel the girl's gaze burning into him. "We're safe for now," he said, breaking the silence. "But we need to figure out what comes next." The girl didn't answer. Her thoughts were elsewhere, still tangled with everything that had happened. Her power, the soldiers, the war. She had only begun to understand what was inside her, but already she felt the weight of it all. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She wasn't just a weapon. She was a key player in something much larger than she could have ever imagined. But was she ready for it? "We need to get to the planet's surface," Kai continued, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "I have a contact there who can help us. Someone who can explain what's happening and how we can stop it. The girl finally looked at him, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Help us with what? You're not telling me everything. Kai met her gaze, his expression guarded. I'll explain everything when we get there, I promise. She didn't believe him. She had trusted too many people before, only to be betrayed. But something about Kai's sincerity made her pause. Maybe he wasn't like the others. Maybe he was telling the truth. The shuttle descended, the ground below them slowly coming into view. The planet's surface was desolate, with jagged mountains and stretches of barren land. But in the distance, she could see a cluster of buildings, a small colony. It was the perfect place to hide, to regroup, to figure out their next move. As they landed, the girl felt a strange sense of unease. Something was different about this place. It didn't feel like a safe haven. It felt like a trap. But she couldn't turn back now. She had no choice but to trust Kai, even if she didn't fully understand why he was helping her. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, and they stepped out into the harsh light of the alien world. The air was thin and cold, the wind biting at their skin as they made their way toward the colony. Kai's steps were quick and purposeful, but the girl lagged behind, her senses alert. We need to meet with my contact, Kai said, his voice low. Stay close and don't trust anyone. The girl nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She scanned the area, her eyes darting from one shadow to the next. The buildings around them were quiet, too quiet. There were no signs of life, no movement. It felt like they were walking through a ghost town. Just as they reached the entrance of the main building, the girl stopped. Kai, she whispered, something's wrong. Before he could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. The girl's heart raced as she spun around, instinctively dropping into a defensive stance. Kai's hand went to his side, his fingers brushing the hilt of his weapon. From the shadows, figures emerged cloaked in dark robes, their faces hidden behind masks. The girl's pulse quickened. They weren't soldiers, but they looked just as dangerous. Guy stepped forward, his voice steady. I told you to stay close. I don't trust them, the girl muttered, her eyes never leaving the masked figures. Who are they? Kai didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to face the figures, his hand still on his weapon. You're too late, he said, his voice calm but firm. I know what you're here for. One of the figures stepped forward, pulling off his hood to reveal a familiar face. The girl's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him instantly. He was one of the soldiers who had come after her. Yarek, Kai said, his voice filled with disdain. I thought you were dead. Yarek smiled, though there was no warmth in it. I was, but then I was brought back. They've been watching you, Kai. Watching both of you. The girl's stomach twisted. Who are you working for? She demanded, her voice hard. What do you want from us? Yarek's smile faded, and he stepped closer. We don't want anything from you, he said, his voice low. We're here to take you back. You belong to them, and you always will. Not anymore, Kai shot back, his voice sharp. She's not going back. Not to you, not to anyone. The girl stepped forward, her heart pounding. I'm not going back, she said, her voice steady but fierce. And I'm not a weapon. I'm not anyone's tool. Garrick's eyes darkened. You don't understand. You never did. They've been watching you, Kai. They know what you've done. And they're coming for you. All of you. The girl's mind raced. Who are they? Who are you talking about? Garrick's gaze flickered to the shadows behind him, and the girl's instincts flared. She wasn't sure what was coming, but she knew it wasn't good. Kai stepped forward, positioning himself between the girl and Yarrick. "If they want a fight, they'll get one," he said, his voice low. "But I'm not backing down." The girl felt the power inside her flare to life again, that familiar heat building in her chest. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't a slave. She wasn't a weapon. She was something more, and she was ready to fight. As the tension in the air grew thicker, she knew one thing for sure. The choices she made now would shape the future of the galaxy. There was no turning back. The final stand, the air was thick with tension as Yorick and his masked figures closed in, their eyes fixed on the girl and Kai. The girl's heart raced, and her hand instinctively went to the energy inside her, the power that still felt foreign, but increasingly familiar with each passing day. Kai was standing in front of her, his body tense, ready for whatever Yarrick had planned. Yarrick's smirk only deepened as he noticed the girl's growing awareness of her own strength. "You don't know what you're playing with, do you?" he sneered. "You're just a tool, a weapon, and that's all you'll ever be." Kai turned to face her, his voice low. "Don't listen to him. You're not what they say. You're more than that. You can control this." The girl nodded, her grip on her power tightening. She could feel it now, like a roaring storm inside her, threatening to break free. Her hands trembled slightly, but her resolve grew stronger. She was not a tool. She was not a slave. She was in control. Yarrick laughed, his voice echoing through the desolate landscape. "You think you can stop me? Stop us. You have no idea how deep this goes. They've been watching you for years. Your power is just the beginning. You're nothing compared to what's coming." The girl clenched her fists. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had been afraid for too long, afraid of what they had made her, of what they wanted her to become. But she wasn't that person anymore. She was choosing her own destiny. "I don't care who's watching," she said, her voice strong, cutting through Yarrick's taunts. "I'm not going back. You're not in control here. I am." With a fierce cry, she unleashed the power inside her. The blast of energy shot forward, striking Yarrick's soldiers with such force that they were knocked off their feet, their weapons clattering to the ground. Yarrick himself staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. Staring at her in shock, Kai stood by her side, watching as the girl's power swirled around her like a storm. Her energy was raw and unrefined, but it was powerful, unstoppable. She had become the force they had always feared, and it was only just beginning. Yarrick took a step back, his face contorted with anger. "You have no idea what you're doing," he shouted. "You're playing right into their hands." The girl's expression was unreadable as she locked eyes with him. "No, you're the one who's been playing games. I'm done being used." Without warning, she reached out with her mind, sending a pulse of energy toward Yarrick. The force of it threw him to the ground, his body slamming against the rocky surface with a sickening thud. He struggled to stand, but the girl was already moving, her eyes fixed on him. "This is the end," she said, her voice cold and final. "You're not in control anymore, and neither are they." The remaining soldiers hesitated, unsure of what to do. They had been trained to fight, to obey, but the sight of the girl, this girl, who had once been nothing more than an experiment fighting back with such power, shook them to their core. They weren't just facing a weapon anymore. They were facing someone who had broken free from their control. "You don't have to do this." One of the soldiers said, his voice shaky. I already have, the girl replied. And you don't have to fight me either. Go back to your masters. Tell them the girl they thought they could control is free. For a moment, there was silence. The soldiers looked at one another, uncertainty in their eyes. Then, one by one, they lowered their weapons. Yarek glared at them in disbelief. Cowards, he spat. You'll regret this. But the soldiers didn't move. They had seen enough. They had felt the power of the girl, and they knew they couldn't win. Kai stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Yarek. It's over. Go back to whoever sent you. We're done with you. Yarek's anger boiled over, but he knew when he had. Lost, with a final snarl, he turned and motioned for his soldiers to follow him. They retreated into the shadows, their footsteps fading into the distance. The girl stood there, her chest heaving, the power inside her still humming, but beginning to settle. It was over, for now at least. The war, the struggle, the constant Furit was all fading away, but she knew this was just the beginning. Kai walked over to her, his expression softening. You did it, he said, his voice filled with admiration. The girl looked at him, her eyes still burning with the energy she had unleashed. We did it, she corrected him. Kai smiled, but there was something deeper in his gaze. There's still a lot to do. The war isn't over, but we've made the first move, and now we're not alone. The girl nodded, her resolve firm. She wasn't just a tool. She wasn't just a slave. She had a purpose, and with Kai by her side, she was ready to take on whatever came next. The shuttle rose into the sky, leaving the battlefield behind. The stars stretched out before them, an endless road ahead. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it, to change the galaxy, to fight for her freedom.